Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Donna Chow, and I am your host and your moderator for today's class. eLotus is the leading provider of continuing education for acupuncturists. And before we begin, let's do a quick housekeeping. If you haven't already, please go ahead and sign up for your eLotus account. New members do receive a free 1 CEU course as a welcome gift. So please be sure to sign up at eLotus.org. This weekend, we'll be hosting a one-day training with Lita Herman on unveiling the mystery of alchemical Chinese medicine. This 8-hour class will focus on alchemy roadmap of treatments, the 9 stages of alchemy, and 13 ghost points. This is a great chance to learn a new modality of treatment for your patients. If you love learning, did you know that this webinar is included with our eLotus Gold Pass? Not only does the Gold Pass give you access to unlimited distant learning CEU courses 24/7, it also includes live CEU webinars that we host each month. Learn more about the Gold Pass on our website. All right, so today's webinar is Intro to Unveiling the Mystery of Alchemical Chinese Medicine, presented by Lita Herman. Today's webinar will be from 12 to 1 p.m. For lecture notes, download them directly from the Blue Course Access page in your eLotus account. To use the webinar chat room, set your chat to preference to everyone so that everyone can see what you're typing and be part of the conversation. To ask the speaker a question, enter your question into the Q&A box, and if time allows, the speaker will respond to them. Now let's get started with today's webinar and welcome Lita Herman, who has spent over 20 years immersed in the philosophies of Taoism, alchemical healing, and Chinese medicine. Lita is a Chinese medicine teacher and alchemical healer. She is the founder of Alchemy Healing Center, a thriving Chinese medicine clinic in Northampton, Massachusetts, dedicated to assisting clients in discovering their true potentials through alchemical transformation. All right, Lita, you can go ahead and take over and share your PowerPoint now.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let's just share that. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm just excited and thrilled to bring this webinar to you. And thank you, Donna, for inviting me. It's been wonderful to work with your team. And I'm going to say that this webinar is an intro to what we're doing on Saturday. So we're basically covering very briefly many of the topics that are going to be covered on Saturday. So the idea is just to give you a brief taste of everything we're going to be discussing on Saturday. So the agenda for Saturday and for today is to give you a general introduction, a brief history of alchemy, and really talk quite a bit about why would you practice alchemy? Because, we're doing our Chinese medicine practice, things move very quickly. Why would we take the time to start to think alchemically? Because it's a very different way of thinking about your clients and the role that you play as an alchemical practitioner, especially in modern times. And so then we will actually go through, and especially on Saturday, some of the alchemical treatments that we're going to be describing, including the 13 ghost points and the 9 heart pains, as well as the 9 stages of alchemy. And today, just very briefly, a little bit about the diagnosis options that you may want to consider, especially in terms of whether or not you're going to be working as a practitioner, for example, with Gui possession. So that's some of the things that we'll be covering a lot more on Saturday as well. And then, we're hoping to save a little bit of time for Q&A today. So, keep your questions to the end, type them in the chat, in the Q&A box, and we'll get to that. So I just wanted to say, because many of you may not know me, I have got started in this particular path when I met Elliot Cohen years ago and studied what was called plant spirit medicine. That was an introduction for me to shamanic healing. I then went on and studied extensively in the Worsley tradition with 5 elements under Nikki Bilton. And that led to me really being introduced to the 13 ghost points and to possession work in general, working with Gui and ghosts. And I then started finding Jeffrey Yuen, who I've been studying with since 2004. I've studied extensively with him, traveling to China 3 times and doing a lot of other travel with him. And so much of what I'm practicing today is a merger of those 2 traditions. And you'll see that as we go through everything we're doing. And, I've been practicing for over 20 years. And I like to say that my gift as a teacher is to take the practical clinical aspects plus the theory. And this stuff is very unusual. So we can talk about it very theoretically, but to actually be able to put this into practice, that is what I'm hoping that I can help you all with. And it's sort of why I've started a lot of the programs that I started. I have the Healing Center, as Donna mentioned, in Northampton, but I also started with the co-owner of the Alchemy Healing Center, something called the Alchemy Learning Center. And in the Alchemy Learning Center, we are providing online classes, such as for the Ghost Points. We have a 13 Ghost Points lecture, other topics that like the 5 elements, the 9 palaces, and things like that. And we also recently released an alchemy book called Through the Mystery Gate, which describes the 9 stages of alchemy in detail. And we have several other books, including 2 on the 5 elements and a gua sha book. And podcasts. So some of you may be here because of our podcast. Many people have written me that they've been listening to it. We've been doing it for several years now, I think almost 3 years now. So since 2018, and it's a lot of fun. We get a lot of laughs. And so it's enjoyable. It's something that you'll enjoy, but also that you can share with your clients if you want to kind of like direct them in this direction. There's a lot in the podcast that can help them do that. And today I wanted you to think about today as really an introduction, and even Saturday as an introduction to the idea of you starting a practice in alchemy or expanding your practice into alchemy if you're already practicing. Because, there's no right or wrong way to do this work. There's only your path. And we're going to talk a lot about this, but it does take time, and it's a transition and a transformation of the practitioner themselves to do this. So I wanted to just have you come with a beginner's mind if you haven't done this before or haven't taken a workshop with me before. So just to get started here, alchemy is a journey, not a race. That's kind of what I was referring to. This is a slow process. And in the beginning, it's just starting out to get to know what it's about. Some of you might have already been doing a lot of self-cultivation work, so this might feel like a continuation of the path you're already on. But regardless, it's a chance for you to go deeper. And on Saturday, we are going to go deeper in terms of understanding ourselves, not just understanding the protocols and the work, but a lot of this is about who we are and the transformation of us as practitioners. So it's challenging. You have to find yourself on a deeper level. And we do all of alchemy, alchemical Chinese medicine, in what's called in the void. And that's the void between heaven and earth. And it's similar to when you might, in shamanic traditions, learn to go into other dimensions. It's where you can communicate with, for example, a gui ghost, if that's your thinking about how you're working with like a possessed client. So these are definitely the weird and wacky and very different from a technical practice. So it is a challenge for many of us. It was a challenge for me. I came to Chinese medicine from the tech world. I was a system engineer and very logical. And so, this was an awakening for me to even come to this place where I am now. So what is alchemical healing? Alchemy is about authenticity. It's about seeing the perfection of your client and in yourself. So many of us, we're focused on the imperfection. We're focused on the illness. Yes, we want the healing, but what we're seeing is the illness. So instead of treating the illness, instead of treating the symptoms, we're getting to the source of it and seeing the perfection that's already there. So it's about what's deeper than the illness. It's like using source points. It's what is the source of this human being, which is why I'm, as you can see, I'm heavily influenced by the 5 elements. And in the 5 element tradition, it's so much about what is that source for the person? What is that core element for the person? So we're looking at a person's authentic identity, their authentic destiny, and whether or not it's been subverted for some reason. And trauma is often the reason, shui qi, evil qi, influences from others. These are all reasons that we get sidetracked on our destiny, on our path. So as an alchemical practitioner, then, we stay 100% focused on our client's perfection, not on the illnesses or the challenges. And not everyone comes to me, for example, at my clinic for alchemy. So every time a new person walks through the door, I ask myself, why are they really here? Yeah, they're having pain, it's hurting or whatever, they're sick, they're not feeling well. But is this person really coming for something more? Are they really coming because they want to do alchemy? And what is the sort of litmus test for that? Are they asking themselves, is there more to life than this? Is there more to life than what they're currently experiencing? Going to work, coming home, watching Netflix, eating a little food, go to sleep, start again the next day, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. If they're asking that question, then it's likely that they're a candidate for alchemy. No matter whether they're feeling sick or well, doesn't matter. So an alchemical healer is not helping anyone. It's a facilitation. So that's the role that we're going to play. It's not desiring a specific outcome. It's going into the treatment with no agenda. You do not need to heal a person. You're just being with the person. So that's maybe different than how you're working at the moment, because people come to us expecting us to heal them. But if you're not expecting anything or any outcome, it actually gives them the freedom to heal the way they need to heal. And as we step into that role of facilitation, that means we're constantly evolving. This is about our journey. So the real reason to become an alchemical healer is your personal evolution. You want to grow and shift and change and spiritually grow. And that's what alchemical healing brings for us as practitioners. It's great for the patient as well, but it's really about your transformation. So patience is a requirement, and also you're the patient. All right. So, and you also bring no ego. That's really important, obviously, to this kind of work because of the spiritual quality of it. And the other thing that we're going to work a lot on Saturday is that you must first have a deep understanding of your own life before you can pretend to know life in another, especially the disturbances in the development of life in another. So you need to understand your disturbances in your life. And this is a quote from one of my favorite set of authors, Claude Lard and Elizabeth Rachat de la Vallée. Okay, so what is alchemy? Alchemy is for when you want to change who you are, but not because you don't like who you are, but because you can become more than who you are. And this is one of Jeffrey Yuen. That's Jeffrey Yuen, if you haven't met him. Jeffrey Yuen's quotes in it from a class of his. And I felt that this really said it well, because so much of the beginning of alchemy work is getting people to love themselves first as they are and accept themselves, because we can't do alchemy. We can't evoke that really big change until there's self-acceptance. Now, the other idea behind alchemy, and this is where you might have the Western idea of alchemy, that we're trying to turn lead into gold. Now, the idea is we're the gold. We're the metal that doesn't ever corrode or break down, that's precious, that you can bury in the ground for 1,000 years, dig it up, and it's still perfect. We are already perfect. We just don't know it. So the idea of the word alchemy is that we're the gold already. We just need to step into that place of being that gold. We think we're the lead. We're going to corrode and degrade and then die. And we're not. We are, everlasting. So what is alchemy? It's the exploration of the mystery of life. It does involve, as a practitioner, you may be working in different dimensions. Transformation is the key. And again, that Western approach of turning base metal into gold is really, from a Taoist perspective, not about the metals, even though they used gold and silver needles often in alchemy. But the idea is that we're the gold. And what they were really trying to get to was the belief that you could actually become physically immortal. So there are many stories about immortals flying from mountaintop to mountaintop. I mean, you've seen some of the movies where, these legendary alchemists were featured, and they were able to do these feats that defy the laws of the world, gravity being the obvious one. So the steps of alchemy is the first sort of group of things you're doing is you're releasing the baggage of this lifetime and past lives. So I call that the free to be me. It's like allowing myself to be truly free and authentic. The second step is that it really is moving into a wu-wei state, which we like to call inspired action, which is why we named the podcast Inspired Action. And what that means is that the next step is the inspired step. It's spiritually inspired. And from that place, you have a belief of limitlessness. So you can see the world from that limitless place that's like a child. And eventually that leads to complete spontaneity, where you don't need that to-do list to remember what you need to do today. You just get the cue from spirit and you step into it, and then you move into the next step and the next step. And the third stage of alchemy, or sets of things that you're doing, is embracing the miraculous. And that's that flying idea, the morphing your body maybe into a different shape. It's time travel. It's all the, way out there stuff. But that is included in this whole alchemy package. And I keep saying, I haven't seen anyone levitate off my table yet, but I really am just waiting for that day to happen. All right. So, again, why alchemy? It's about the authenticity and freedom to be whoever you want to be. It's about letting go of your suffering, where sometimes we're really attached to our suffering. And even though, you might be helping someone, each person, it's a journey of one. It can feel like a lonely path. And one of the other reasons we started the Alchemy Learning Center is we wanted to create a community of people who are pursuing alchemy themselves. And finding your tribe, so to speak, because that's what the alchemists often did. They went to mountains and they kind of grouped together and they pursued these pursuits together. So alchemy in a treatment, what is it about? So initially, it really is about clearing that baggage. So what is the baggage? Often there might be shui qi, which is often translated as evil qi. So what is shui qi? Many of you know, but I'll just go through it. Obviously gu, which is worms, possession, which I've already been talking a lot about, which could be by gui or ghosts, or emotional possessions. Thoughts can become like demons in a human's mind. Then there's also PTSD from trauma. And so alchemy is about releasing that trauma, releasing it out of the cellular body, in other words, and really getting true transformation. Now, it also is, just more practically going to be really helpful with many chronic diseases. And often, with all these diseases that I'm listing in the slides, I think it gets to a blank slate. It clears the deck. It's like, what were the emotional states that set up the chronic Lyme, that set up the post-COVID long haulers, that set up the autoimmune diseases? We're going to talk some about this on Saturday because if someone has MS, for example, why did they get to that place? Well, because they were caretaking for everyone else, and family was most important, and maybe they forgot about themselves. But their true essence, their authentic self, knows that something else needs to happen. So illness comes in to kind of redirect them. They're on that detour from their destiny. So what happens with alchemy is we come in and we kind of clear out some of this baggage that is the root cause of chronic disease. Sometimes it's deep emotional blocks, that come from like maybe emotional abuse of a parent or a spouse or something like that. It can be about obsessive thinking that we're working with and clearing that. So this is, just some of the things that we're looking at in terms of alchemical treatments. And just in terms of like whether you think this is something for you, it's really important that the 8 immortals were this group of immortals that basically tried to show humanity that anyone can be an alchemist. Doesn't matter if you're old or young, male or female, transgendered, there's, all types of people in that 8 set. And so anyone, including you, could be an alchemist. And so if you want to sort of look at this as a practitioner, you you need to be practicing your own alchemy to be an alchemical practitioner. So that means you need to become an alchemist. And again, this is a slow thing. It can take lifetimes, definitely years and years, but it's a process of self-discovery at first, self-awareness, and then the cultivation of you, like a garden that needs to be tamed and, cultivated. And so the question is, do you want to transform and evolve your own life? Maybe not. Maybe this is great where it is. It's finally where you want it to be. You don't want to mess with it. Fine. That's fantastic. Like, no judgment. So, that might mean that you're not into alchemy. But doing alchemy with others is also going to enhance your self-cultivation. So I firmly believe my self-cultivation has catapulted forward very quickly because I do it day in and day out with others. Every time one of my clients goes through a huge transformation, guess what? I transform. And that's actually how you know when a treatment's really working, is when you feel that transformation come as well. So you get to self-cultivate as you're helping others do it. So a normal, and I don't mean that, pejoratively at all, but a normal human being's life, we're often focused on survival, or at the very least, just trying to be happy. And we're basing our happiness based on what's outside and not what's inside. And I know many of you probably meditate and do other things, and you know that that's not really the goal. But we have to establish the fact that that's really the majority of people in the world. And then there are many who are trying to get beyond that. But I like to say that, when we're being that normal human being, it's like we're a little boat on a sea, and we're just being tossed this way and that way, and we really aren't in control. And so, it feels like 1 minute is good and the next minute is bad, and 1 minute feels right and the next minute feels wrong. And, there's no control. So alchemy is about giving you the rudder and the sail and the steering for your little boat so that you can master your own life. It's really like becoming a wizard. That's sort of that immortal status, is like a wizard, so it's really that quest to become immortal. And immortal is a mindset, and immortality is a mindset for right now. It's not a future state. Are you immortal today? Or are you just preparing for your death in the future? And then another question is, do you want to die? Because, many of us don't want to be, old. And, we just wish we could be young forever. And if we're not going to be young, then great, we'll die. And then we'll come back and we'll become reborn, if you believe in reincarnation. So, or do you want to be on the planet as long as you can, because you're mastering your life, and the longer that you're here, the more and more you can master your life? So these are some of the core sort of questions that alchemists are asking themselves. It's the questions that the ancient alchemists talked about. So again, why alchemy in a treatment? It's about self-cultivation. It's about your personal transformation. It's about your evolution. And in Buddhism, they often say that, it's a path to enlightenment. And I would say that this is sort of the equivalent of what people often say is enlightenment, because when you get to that wu-wei state of complete spontaneity, it is that feeling of enlightenment. So then the other question is, well, why bother? What's it going to help? So one of the things is that, as life accumulates experiences, it often weighs us down. And so it feels like shackles. So we have these memories. And so they're like weights. And so much of like the ghost points, for example, is about releasing those weights so that we aren't, having ballasts on us so that we can't fly. It's also about having this limitless interaction with the world, that we can perceive what's really truly happening in the world, and not from our blinders that we've created from our personal perspectives. It's really broadening that, like a child sees the world without any habitual way of looking at the world. It's about our self-cultivation, desiring to know more, to do more, and to seek more constantly. And so just looking back again at this quote, this is really what it's about, that Master Yuan talked about. So who were some of the alchemists? If you haven't studied them before, I know many of you probably are familiar with some of these people, but I tried to bring a few others that you might not know. Goheng was famous for really some of the early alchemy theories, and he worked with stone elixirs. And they were drinking, poisonous substances like cinnabar and mercury. And so, that was a little questionable. I mean, if you drank it, then surely you're immortal. So maybe that's why they were doing it. I always joke, that's a joke, but they really believed that these substances were evolving them to physical immortality. And I often mention Goheng's wife, Bao Gu, because Bao Gu is little talked about, but on Goheng's mountain, there was a lot more of Bao Gu's presence. In fact, so much that one of her washing pools had recipes around it. And there was a famous woman in China that just won the Nobel Peace Prize, I think in 2018. And the recipe that sort of was the basis of her research was one of the placards next to her pool. So I think she deserves to be mentioned as the wife of Goheng, and also present as part of that alchemical group that was on the mountain Luo Fushan. And Sun Si Miao is obviously the most famous medical doctor, period. He's called the king of medicine and is in many of the temples. And, his work was like, let's stop drinking poisonous substances. Let's start looking at doing internal alchemy, where through, acupuncture and qigong and meditation, we can begin to get some of the same results. So he was the one who really sort of transitioned that. And then the 8 immortals, I already talked about. There's a, obviously they're all famous, but there's a very famous one named Lu Dongbin, who we're going to talk about in our class on Saturday a little bit. And then there's some others that you may have heard of. I know you've probably heard of Ma Danyang because of the 12 starry sky points. And even though he was famous, Sun Bu'er, his wife, was even more famous at the time because I think she was kind of their teacher's favorite. And their teacher was an immortal, one of the 8 immortals, Wang Cheng Yang. And I may be butchering some of these names, so please forgive me. Still working on my pronunciation. But anyway, Sun Bu'er, I think is, we're going to tell a little bit of her story. But we don't have a lot of time today, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the alchemists. I just wanted to show you some pictures. This is Goheng's mountain, right near where the placard was that had the recipe on it. And this is one of the alchemical cauldrons. And we're going to talk about why those are so important. And one of the doors on Sun Si Miao's house, and you'll notice the yin yang symbol is on its side, which is a symbol of alchemy. And there's the, oops, going the wrong way. Okay, so where to start for you? For you, it's about having an open mind and an open heart. And particularly, remember I said self-discovery and self-awareness. What is your temperament? What is what we call your elemental stack up? And why is this important? Because in order to develop the amazing rapport and intimacy that is required to do alchemy with another person as a practitioner, you really need to know who you are, because you're showing up with certain assumptions and ways of being and energetics, and you're going to meet someone who might be completely opposite from you, and you need to create that rapport. And I'm sure many of you do this now naturally by instinct, but it's so much better to do that with really an in-depth knowing. We put together a class on the 5 elements in the Alchemy Learning Center. And I know that some acupuncture schools really spend very little time teaching the 5 elements. So if you feel like you need to get a little bit more familiar with it, I think you'll really enjoy the class. It's fun, it's funny, it's a great way to learn. And we also have one on the 9 palaces as well. And the 9 palaces are very important because we're going to talk a little bit about the 9 heart pains treatment. And this is all based on the 9 palaces. So that's important. Once you have sort of that established, then you can begin to really work with the alchemy, because the alchemy is like the fairy dust that we sprinkle over these 2 things. So we always say that first, with any client, we need to understand their elements. We need to understand what are their priorities in life, in their destiny, and then we can start working on the transformation. Again, self-acceptance first, then change will come. So understanding these concepts of alchemy, this is more important than the specific steps that I'm going to go through next. I'm sure you're all eagerly awaiting. But I wanted to say, if you understand these concepts, you can theoretically invent your own alchemy. I mean, Gohong invented this alchemy based on what he believed. And so anyone can work on that level. And again, it's just we need to really understand the concepts behind it. So for you to step into these shoes, it's really about stepping out of your normal life, becoming a watcher of yourself. I always reference Eckhart Tolle's work because he was so good at describing what it's like to watch yourself. And to recognize that even though this alchemical process is outlined linearly, in other words, there's step 1, step 2, step 3, you're going through sort of this process. I always say it's a roadmap. And, it's just some very smart people said, if you do it in this order, it's great. But I also say you can repeat and circle back, because that's what happens often. We hit little snags in the road. We start taking detours. We have to go back. We have to find our way again. And that's really common. And also to remember with yourself and with your clients, it's not a time-based schedule kind of thing. It is just based on each person's timeline. And that could be slow or that could be fast. It's a journey, not a race. And we like to say it's about having fun along the way, because the Taoists really were having fun. They were that serious. So there's that as well. So as you begin this work, you can ask yourself some questions about you as a practitioner. Who are you? Are you more the technician? Really interested in the point location, really interested in the classics and what every little thing that was said, and this is right and that is wrong, and the order of things? Or are you more of the teacher, and you just want to impart this wisdom that you've found over the years to your clients? So, instead of eating the fish, they can go out and catch the fish, And then the shaman is the third one. Are you just a facilitator? Are you just stepping into the footsteps that are already in front of you and not trying to, follow an agenda and achieve a goal, but just be with a person? So these are the 3 types of healers. And of course, many of us are all 3, and you really can't be a shaman and not be a technician. These days, people expect us to be all 3, but it's good to know what you're sort of more feeling associated with. What's an affinity for you? Are you more the shaman or are you more the teacher? This is important. This is about self-discovery, self-awareness. The other question to ask yourself right now is, are you a hero, a saint, or an alchemist? So what does a hero want to do? They want to save people. But the saint is more that teacher role. They want to teach people acceptance of what is, because that's what they do. They accept what is. And then the alchemist is in the middle. The alchemist is facilitating transformation. So kind of a little bit heroic, but only when inspired. So a little bit of a saint. So it's kind of right there in the middle. And of course, I'm partial to the alchemy way of being, but that doesn't mean the hero or the saint isn't correct. I mean, all 3 are perfectly wonderful. So how do you measure success in alchemy? So, because you're just facilitating, right? Well, it's about you. It's about, did you have huge realizations with your patient as they did? And then you went through those together. And I also say it's really good to come with a no mistakes attitude. Byron Katie used to tell this story about the first time she heard the word namaste. She thought she heard no mistakes. And so she adopted that always as no mistake, no mistake. And so you must have this attitude when you're doing this work, because you can't think when someone freaks out that that's just not part of their destiny. That's not the next step in their life. So you don't go, and freak out with them. You just hold the space for them. And for example, if you're doing like a possession treatment and the ghost leaves, someone might actually want their ghost back, and there's no way to get the ghost back. Once it's gone, it's gone. So, you may encounter that issue and like, oh, what am I going to do? So you have to trust, and we call it trust with a capital T. You trust in the moment that you're always going to make the right decision, even if it doesn't seem like the right decision right away. So in terms of diagnosing and figuring out what treatments to do and all of this, the diagnosis requires the presence of the spirits in you. This is why I'm emphasizing this so much. The presence of your spirits is due to your inner connection with your own life. That's a Claude Lar quote as well. So your presence with the person, it's about leaving your ego and your expectations and your stuff at the door when you enter the room. And then when you're with the person, we do a lot of work with how can you enter the void and meet the spirit face to face of the person. It's like you're in a different dimension and you're communicating with the person. You're being in the moment with the person, but in a very deep way. We say you're going from the void of your heart to the void of their heart. So it's about becoming like a magician. You know, in my experience, I've had freaky, weird things happen in treatment rooms with alchemy. I mean, candles have melted because of the heat. I've had such freezing, like ice cold rooms. I've had, experience of traveling to different dimensions. It's a lot of also where you're developing the ability for your mind to run multiple tracks at once, because the patient will be talking. We play random music, which I'm going to talk about in the treatments. And so you're going to be hearing the words of the music that might resonate with what the person's saying. There might be birds chirping outside. There might be sirens on the street. The air might be moving in the room, the light. These are all factors of alchemy, because it's kind of a magical, place that you're creating, a time and space that you're creating. So you're all probably wondering, what are alchemical treatments? So let's get to that. So, well, first of all, I already explained that Goheng was doing elixirs. People also do alchemy as qigong, which we're not going to talk about even on Saturday. That's not my forte. I'm really focused more on the inner alchemy and the acupuncture, acupressure treatments, these protocols. This is sort of the area that we're looking at, which is, often called inner alchemy. And so there's two types of protocols. There's lots of protocols, but there's two types. One is this cleansing, purging, the shui qi protocols, like the ghost points. And the other is the personal evolution. Like once you get a person to a good place, how do they move forward? And that's the 9 stages of alchemy. So this first type is this cleansing, purging protocol. So of those types, what we're going to be talking about are the ghost points. And that's about unhooking the person from what makes them not free to be their authentic selves. I've incorporated into alchemy, and others of different traditions have either incorporated or not. But IDs and EDs are the internal dragons or devils, and the external dragons or devils that Worsley made famous. And I believe that those treatments are still really valuable and really should be included in the alchemy group of protocols, because they're really excellent for working with Gui. And Gui means ghosts. And so we're really talking about entities in that case. And you have to remember that Gui are beings too. They need care. They're also your patient. So you don't want to go into a possession treatment thinking, I'm going to get that Gui, cast that demon out. It's not about that. But IDs and EDs are also good for emotional possessions, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. We also have a grieving treatment, the heart pains treatment, which is for loneliness and addictions. And we also have the starry sky points, which many of you know, as an alchemy treatment. So that's often for physical issues, and it's about alignment with the stars. So that's that one. And then finally, the second type of protocols is these 9 stages, and each stage has its own protocol, and some of the stages can take years to move through. So you're doing the same treatment over a long period of time with a client. And again, it can take even lifetimes to master. For those of you who, haven't been working with this idea of Gui, Gui are, translated as ghosts. And, just so you know, it takes a lot of advanced work to really be working with Gui. Maybe some of you are already doing IDs and EDs with potential Gui treatments. And I would say that, one of my goals is, one of the reasons I started an apprenticeship is I really feel that this is an area where people really do need some mentoring, because it is, something that could attach to a practitioner. So, there are different kinds of ghosts. Obviously, there's the hungry ghosts, romantic ghosts, traveling ghosts. There's all these different kinds of ghosts. And so we're going to do a whole workshop at the Alchemy Learning Center on March 13th about Gwei. So I'm not going to talk a lot about it today, but I wanted you to know that we're going to have a longer conversation about that another time. But basically, Gwei are the spirits of earth, and you learn how to actually have conversations with them and help them find their way home. And it's about love, not overpowering them. But there's also kind of emotional Gwei. That's not really true. Emotional ghosts are like when you're possessed by your own thoughts. And it's like a worm that gets into your mind, and it got implanted there and you can't get it out. So a lot of illness is an emotional Gwei, because it's like, I can't get out of that state of mind of illness. Long-term abuse can bring in some of the negative thinking. So many quote unquote possessions are emotional. So it's a good place to start. So when we're going to talk on Saturday, for those of you who are going to join us, we're going to be more focused on the beginning parts of this, like how can you do these possession treatments with, as a beginner, as starting out. And I know some of you may be much more advanced than that. There'll be plenty in that class as well for the advanced students, but I want to, also make sure that the people who are just starting out are safe and doing it well. Phlegm itself, if you don't really believe in ghosts and Gwei and all of that, you can just think of it like phlegm. Really entrenched phlegm is like a Gwei. It's very hard to get it to shift. It takes a long time. Many of us have many clients who have really entrenched phlegm, and that phrase, misting the heart. So it takes over the heart. It possesses the person. So you can think of it that way. It can make them go crazy. It mists the heart. So all of these things are, the ghost points are fantastic for these psychological dysfunctions that can be caused by phlegm. So how do you decide which treatment? We're going to talk a lot about this on Saturday as well. And it's about fundamentally, diagnosing some of these things is that you have an innate knowing as a human being when something's not right with another human being. You could go to the grocery store tonight, could talk to the cashier and can go, lovely person, but something's not right with their basic humanness. And that means that they have shui qi. So, we can talk all we want about the pulses. We can talk about all these diagnostic techniques, but fundamentally somewhere in you, when you meet someone the first moment, you often know. And so I think all humans know that. But obviously as practitioners, we have been studying this, so we really know it. So why would you do IDs? IDs is about a block of the Yi spirit, which is housed in the spleen. It's about accessibility to your heart. So, we often ask someone, this is one of the diagnostic techniques, are you accessible to your own heart? And many of them are like, I don't think so. Because they're stuck inside themselves. Or if it's an ED's treatment, their will is blocked. That means they can't do what they want to do. No matter how many times they set out and they try and they try to go forward, nothing happens. I had a client years ago who had a brain tumor. It worked out fine. It was removed, wasn't, no problems with it, not cancerous. But she'd also had a ghost points treatment right before that happened. Within 6 months, because of the ED's treatment, the ED's will treatment, within 6 months, she published a book. Now that may not seem like a big idea, but she had spent, 20 years writing this book and couldn't do anything with it. So the fact that, after the ED's treatment, she knew she was completely transformed. She said, I don't understand what happened, but suddenly I can do whatever I want. And now she's got 3 or 4, maybe more books at this point. She's cranking them out. And then the ghost points. So how do you know when to do the ghost points? The ghost points are great for releasing cellular and emotional patterns. So I like to say it's for obsessions, but it can be used for many different things, including Gwei. So a lot of my first year apprentices are studying just the ghost points, and we're using it for a lot of different things. So they're very important that way. So how do you diagnose these things? You're going to be looking at the basic humanness factor. You're going to be looking in their eyes to see if it looks clear, like you can see the Shen. You're going to be taking pulses to make sure they're not like muffled everywhere, like pregnancy pulses are slippery across the board. So there's some similarity there. A lot of people have described them many different ways. It's a long discussion. You can even say, can I put my hand on the front of someone's body and feel and access the front of their body? Or can I put my hand on the back of the body and access them? Those are, have you ever had been on someone's back shoe points and been like, I can't, it's like I can't feel the person. It's like there's nothing there. That's EDs, for example. You can ask them, like I said, can they access their own heart or can they assert their own will? And you also need to start understanding the difference between possession and obsession. So these are all diagnostics that we talk about in these classes, and definitely in the Gwei class that we're going to be talking about on the 13th. The next thing to just know is that some of these treatments take all day. So I say 4 to 6 hours, but really it's until it's done. So the question is, with the work you're doing today, I'm pretty sure most of you are doing it within an hour's time frame. That's pretty standard. Is an hour enough time to release something that's been there for years? An hour is a very short time to completely change someone's life. And alchemy is so transformational. That's what we're going for with some of these treatments. So we're not just trying to do a little bit and wait a week, do a little bit more, wait a week, do a little bit more. Lovely, wonderful work. Primary channels is fantastic. Even 8 extraordinary vessels, fantastic, but it's slow and it's over time. Whereas a lot of alchemy is really going in and shifting some big things in this longer treatment. So these long sessions, it's about shifting things on a deeper level. You can still do alchemy in these short timeframes in your current practice. You might pick one ghost point, for example, and just do that. But it's actually harder for the client often to do this level of work again in that 1 hour time frame. There are certain elemental types who actually enjoy doing it that way, but most don't. They do better with a long session. So some issues require more time and some people just require more time. So you can think about how this would completely change your practice if you're currently working in that 1 hour time frame or 45-minute time frame. It's really a different approach. So again, it's like I usually do 4 to 6 hours for these longer sessions. And again, it's life-changing. And the results of one ghost point treatment lasts 3 to 6 months. So huge transformation over 3 to 6 months. So it's a really different way to look at it. We meet together for that one day and a follow-up session, and then they have 3 to 6 months to experience the changes. So other challenges that lead to other treatments, we talked about grieving. People can get stuck in grieving, and you can't do alchemy from that place. So we need to deal with the grief. The heart pains, when people can't be vulnerable and they're really isolated or they have addictions, they're trying to fill the emptiness inside. This is something that we would do a heart pains treatment for. And then we talked about the starry sky points. So these are all part of the alchemical group of treatments that we're doing. So a ghost points treatment, each point you develop your own relationship with. So when I'm teaching apprentices, I'm trying to tell them my relationship with each point, but fundamentally you're going to learn your own. You're going to decipher the code on your own. You're given a name like Ghost Palace. You're like, what does that mean? So after years of working on Do 26 Ghost Palace, I'm like, that's the door to the palace. This is the interface with the world, the nose, the mouth. So you start to get these realizations yourself about each point, just like an herb or just like an acupuncture point in general. But the ghost points have their own magic to them, and you have to sort of get in there and understand them. So each point is your teacher. And of course, you're transforming as you learn. And as you go through different protocols, each point is going to be very different on each person. So that's important to acknowledge. So again, there's no one right way to do the ghost points, for example, but like you can do a single point. I had a woman say her entire life was changed by one point I did in a 20-minute session, which was Ghost Market. And it changed her life, and she moved to a different state, different job, different love life, and everything changed because of this one point. And it was about, how does she speak about herself in the world? So that's an example. So trauma, is the main focus often of the 13 ghost points. And so it may have affected multiple points. So that's why we do all of them in one session. And the important thing is that you stay on the point until it's done. Sometimes it can take an hour for one point, which is really different than what you're probably doing today. So I wanted to save a little time for questions. So I'm going to go quickly through a couple of these stories. I might not get to them all today, but some of the things that we've worked with alchemy. Now, this is going through many of these treatments over a long period of time. One of my, most sick Lyme cases, chronic Lyme, can't get out of bed, couldn't function, but was a musician, wanted to be a musician, wasn't really being a musician. After, 5 years, she's completely stepped into her real destiny in life and not in pain, not sick, and even mentally has the mindset of health now. But that's a long process. It doesn't mean it's faster, but what was faster was each step along the way. Initially, the first treatment, everything shifted. She was right away getting out of bed and feeling better. And then the next step, and then the next step. So she had to start to love herself. There was severe childhood issues. So, years and years of just abuse and things that went wrong. So she had to, go from there. I had a person who came to me with golfer's elbow who swore up and down there was nothing emotional going on in his life. It took a long time to figure it out, but finally there's a point on the elbow for the ghost points. When I did that point, turns out he then talks about this legal case against this person who betrayed him. So even though he didn't think there was anything emotional going on, guess what? His golfer's elbow went away the next day after doing the ghost point. A very simple case, but very important. One woman came to me. We've done alchemy now for years. She was really ready to give up. And I think she probably would have passed. She was in her 80s. Her husband died. Life was over. Not really any reason to live. And after doing alchemy, she has had the most amazing renaissance. I think it's been at least 5 or 6 years that I've known her. And she's an artist, a poet, a Tai Chi practitioner. I mean, she's just living life, obviously without her husband, but enjoying it. Another case is a woman who brought me her son. And, he was very, very dark at the time. And the teachers were worried about him. And then he completely transformed. So she felt like he really came back to her. So that's an example. So a lot of people say, well, how do you get into the void? We're going to talk about this on Saturday quite a bit. And I'm going to have to sort of skip forward because we're running out of time. I wanted to say that a lot of you obviously are acupuncturists, so you're really focused on the needle. A lot of the work that I'm doing is teaching people how to use non-needle techniques. And you can use needle or non-needle techniques with all of the alchemy treatments, except some are actually prescripted to be acupressure, not acupuncture or just moxa. But the important thing to know is that many of the students that I'm working with have learned non-needle techniques and incorporated them into their practice and prefer them for alchemy. So what do I mean by that? Then your finger is the needle. You're doing the technique with your finger instead of inserting the needle. There's a lot of reasons why that's advantageous. And of course, you can still use needles, but I just wanted to explain to you that it's very exciting to get the ability to do non-needling needles techniques. And these treatments are ritualistic in nature. So they're about playing music. They're about paying attention to the room. You might be interested in the 4 directions. There's all kinds of things that are happening. And so this is about creating that ritualistic space. And then I just wanted to end by saying that the 9 stages of the alchemy are really the more exciting parts of alchemy. We all kind of get excited about the ghost points. But what if someone's ready to move forward? They have a sincere willingness to change their life. What is going to get them there? And that's the 9 stages of alchemy. So each stage is an elixir, one like that goes with Gahung's like poisonous elixirs, but you don't need to use the poisonous things. We have these treatments. So each stage is a treatment that takes about an hour. I usually do it in an hour and a half just to give people time. And so you walk through these stages step by step. So the first 3 stages clear away the baggage of this lifetime. The second 3 stages open your perceptions and help you manifest your potential. And then those last 3 are really those gravity defying feats and, time travel and things like that. So those were the traditional 9 stages of alchemy, which we're going to go over again on Saturday. So again, you can think about it as, this is the first 3. The first 3 stages are basically getting ease in your life, releasing the baggage of this lifetime, and then previous lifetimes. And I'm going through each one. I thought we were going to finish. I guess I put a little bit more in. Stage 4 is like becoming a child again and taking the blinders off of your sensory orifices. Stage 5 is becoming the sage so that you're a divine instrument. And stage 6 is entering a Wu Wei state of spontaneity and really flying in your life, that inspired action state. Stage 7 is about morphing. Stage 8 is being the ninja. And stage 9 is that time travel. So all of those 9 stages are discussed in the Through the Mystery Gate book, which you can get at any online bookstore. We describe each stage. We have meditations and techniques to work through for each stage. So that's a great introduction to the 9 stages of alchemy. And as I said before, we have on Saturday with eLotus a workshop that's basically everything we did today in much more detail. And then on March 13th, we're doing a Gui possession class through the Alchemy Learning Center. So you can go there to sign up. And we also have an apprenticeship program that's currently running. And the next one's going to start likely in September. It seems like we have quite a lot of people who have already signed up. So it'll be sometime between September and January for the next group. And so the reason that we developed the Alchemy Apprenticeship program is we were teaching these classes and people were going off and trying things and they were really struggling to really grasp this work. So it's a little bit more hand-holding, a little bit more mentorship and supervision as well. So that's sort of all of it today. And I'd love to answer any questions people have. If anyone has any, I'm looking at the different boxes here. So it sounds like I don't see any particular questions. So I guess if that's it, Donna, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure. Someone asked, do you need to live in Massachusetts to do the apprenticeship? No, because we have, due to COVID, we've put much of it online. We do recommend that we somehow get in the same time and space for periods of time just for the supervision part. And that's really up to each person and we can talk about it. And then someone said something about books that I recommend. Obviously, you can read Gahung himself. There's not a lot of books out there in terms of the classics that I think have been translated into English. Obviously, if you can read Chinese, there's much more available to you. But there's not a lot of books other than Through the Mystery Gate, which is why I put it out there as, basically as my interpretation of it. Someone said, can you use ghost points in breast cancer? Obviously, any disease is going to benefit from it. I always start with every, especially, any cancer patient. I work a lot with, stage 4 or, some severe cases. I always start with alchemy. And most of my cancer patients are doing a lot of alchemy, and it's really helping them in terms of their mental states, which we know is so important for something like cancer. Thanks, everyone. Reading all your comments. Let's just see if I missed any questions. Yeah, that's all that I see at the moment. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate you all coming, and reach out to me. My email is at the top here, lita@alchemylearningcenter.com. You're welcome. I really welcome any emails from anyone, and Would love to chat with anyone who's interested in this topic. Obviously, it's dear to my heart, so I'm always interested in learning more what you're doing and what you want to do for the future. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Lita. We appreciate you guys being here. If you enjoyed today's class, we'd appreciate it if you could share your experience on social media to help promote both our speaker and eLotus. And once again, please remember to sign up for Lita's full day class if you enjoyed today's short preview. And that's it for today, everyone. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you at the next webinar. Bye.
Thank you.